Thanks everybody for joining. I see some familiar names in there, so looking forward to jumping right into it. But yeah, this is the final piece in the series that we've been doing these past few weeks, and looking at permissions. So we'll look at all of the different features within Stacker that touch this. So let me share my screen and we'll jump into this app that we've been working on. And just as a quick recap, what we've been building is this sales CRM. So we've got salespeople and they need to manage their deals. And so the origin of this is actually a spreadsheet, which we've converted into a Stacker app. First we focused on data and then layouts, and now we're thinking about permissions and our users. And this whole concept kind of touches a number of different features, and that's what we'll be looking at today. But I did make a few updates to this app, and which really inform what we're going to be looking at today. So if we look at our data here, we have all of our users, and we have a few different sets of users, you'll notice, and this is something that I've updated. We've got direct reports, we have managers, and then we have company users. So these are people that are tied to they work at the companies that are in these deals that these salespeople are nurturing, and sort of as like a pre-sales type of offering. They're given access to a portal where they can see their company and give some information. So we've got these three types of users, and we want all of these users to be able to manage and see different things. The view of a direct report is obviously going to be different from a manager, and that is going to be different from a company user. So today, really what we're going to focus in on is how we can build unique app experiences within our Stacker app using things like permissions and roles and filtering. So let's jump right into it. And just as a preface to all of this, I think permissions is one of the more challenging aspects of Stacker. So if on first viewing or first explanation you don't get it, that's totally fine. It's taken me, time to learn permissions as well. But hopefully I can get you a bit closer. So firstly, what we're going to do is we're going to look at what we call roles. And so in Stacker, we have these two different types of permissions. We've got basic permissions and then more advanced permissions and roles. Just a note sort of on plan wise, when we're looking at things like roles, which we'll look at, and advanced permissions, these sit on the pro plan, whereas basic permissions are available across all plans. But let's dive into it firstly. The first thing we want to do is look at roles. So I'm going to go to app settings and click on roles, and I've gone ahead and already just created some stock roles that we can use. So we've got our company users. In fact, maybe we'll just name that to company users. We have manager, direct reports, and we're going to use these roles to really create that unique experience for each of these. You don't have to have roles. If and it may be the case that you just have an app where you've got one set of users and they just access one set of records, in which case you can just use basic permissions. But if you do have a bunch of different groups of users, roles are really helpful to manage that. So we've got our roles set up, and the key thing about permissions is like the sequence of when you do certain things. So what we're going to do next is set up a user table, and key thing to note is that you can't set up permissions until you've set up a user table. Something that I did not know when I was first kicking around in Stacker, but helpful thing to know. So when we're setting up a user table, really, we're just telling Stacker, these are the people that we want to be able to log into our Stacker app. So if I go to my users, I've gone ahead and actually set this up for us. We've got all our users, but let's take a look at the settings that we've got here. So you can pick a table in your set of tables in your data, and these might be Stacker tables, they might be Airtable tables. Right now I'm referencing a Stacker table. We have the email. So the email is obviously your users are going to use that to log in. And then there's a couple ways that you can give access to these users. You can do it manually. What that means is that when you sync that list, you can toggle the ones that you want and the ones that you don't want. I've set it to automatic just because I find this is the easiest way to kind of set things up. Once it's set, you don't really have to worry about it. And then right below it, we have roles. And this is why I set up the roles first, because in the user table, you define how roles are assigned to our different users. So we have a default role, which is direct report. And then we have some conditional rules. So for example, if the type of record is manager, they're going to get the manager role. If they're a company user, they're going to be assigned this company user role. It's okay if this is not like kind of getting into your brain immediately, but I think as we go through it will make a little more sense. But you can see on our user list here, if you look at roles, the system is just automatically assigning those roles based on the rules that we set up. And all of those rules are informed by the data. So here we've got this type that tells us what type of users we have, and then roles are assigned that way. So we've got that. We've got our roles sorted out. We took a look at our user table, and now we want to actually start jumping in and using these roles to inform how our app displays information. So as I mentioned, for each of these users, I want them to have a unique experience in this app. So what I'm going to do first is change the navigation and have it only accessed by certain roles, because, for example, for a direct report, we don't want him to see all the team reviews, or him or her. We don't, there's just certain things we don't want them to see. In the case of, company users, we really only want them to see their company page. We don't want them seeing bookings or the deal flow, things like that. And so what we can do is we can go to app settings and then go to navigation. And the navigation are all of these pages here. You can rearrange these however you want. But what we want to do is assign different roles to this navigation. So for the My Profile, we want to take out company users because they're not going to have that profile. Same goes for this as well. We'll take out the company users. Company users, we're just going to take that page out altogether. We don't need it. For my company, this is actually only for company users to view. We don't need it for the others. For deals, we're going to take our company users out of there. We don't want them seeing deals. My bookings, we're just going to do that for direct reports. And then managers are going to be able to view all bookings to review them. And then team reviews, we only want managers to see this. So we have already changed how this app is working. And a good way to sort of view this is using the preview feature. So if we preview, we're previewing as Donna right now, and you can see the associated roles. So we know that Donna's a manager. But if we switch to Thomas, who's a direct report, you'll notice that those pages just disappear. And if we jump to, let's see, a company user, you'll notice that, all of those pages are gone. They're just the ones that we want them to see, which is looking great. We still need to do some more work here to do some filtering. So you'll notice if I go to Susan, for example, who's a direct report, when we go to My Profile, we're still just seeing Michael. Obviously, we want Susan to see her profile and not Michael's. So we have a couple ways that we can approach this. We can either create a permission rule, which would say that only people can only view their own profile. But in this case, I actually want my users to be able to see their team members' profiles as well. So I'm going to use something else. I'm going to use a different approach, which is setting up a filter. So I'm going to go into on the My Profile page, I'm going to edit the layout. And we're going to set up a filter. And that filter is going to filter this record. And we want it to be the current user. So is current user. This means that we're going to show whoever's logged in, when they go on this page, they're going to see their own record there as opposed to others. You'll notice that it's disappeared here in your kind of admin view, and that's just because there's no user that's being fed to this page. So something to consider as you're building. But if we go to a preview now, you'll notice that we're previewing as Susan, and we get her profile, which is great. We jump over to Michael. We've got Michael's. So already kind of getting closer to what we want. We've got these profiles that are filtering now. And when our users sign in, they're going to see their own information and not just, random information. So next, what we want to do is do some more updates to these profiles. So you can see that we're on Michael's profile right now. And he's got some tabs. He's got direct reports, which is kind of strange because Michael's not a manager, so he doesn't have any direct reports. And then he's also got this reviews and feedback. So we actually want to show these things only for certain types of users. So in the case of somebody like Michael, who's a direct report, we don't really want to see a direct report list. If we go to someone like Donna, who is a manager, that makes sense, right? She's got her direct reports there, and obviously she's going to want to see those. The other thing we want to change as well is feedback. I mean, these reviews and feedback, these are really only for direct reports. And so we want to, have some different rules here so that we display these differently. So I'm going to jump back to our layout. And we're just going to find a team member. And we're going to go to the tabs. So you'll notice for all these tabs, which is a great feature, you have these little eyes here, and these determine whether these are visible or not. So I want to set up a rule to just change the visibility of these. So for our direct reports, we only want, this is where roles come in handy. We just want managers to see this. We can go is manager. And we also just want them to see their own. So we're going to go, the record is that users, and save. And so now when we preview, I'll just save this. Now on Michael, you don't see that direct reports, which is great. But if you go to Donna, who is a manager, we're not seeing it. Well, because we're not signed in as her. Well, that makes sense. So if we go to Donna and sign in as Donna, you can see that she can see direct reports now, which is great. Next, we want to do that reviews and feedback, which is just for our direct reports. And obviously, we just want direct reports to see their own feedback. We don't want Michael to go and view other people's feedback. So we're going to go to our tabs, set up another rule. This is going to be the user role is direct reports. And then obviously here we really want this one, which is just showing the current users, because we don't want our co-workers kind of sneakily looking at people's feedback. So let's save that, and we'll give it a preview. I always like to, whenever I do some sort of rule, to preview it. It's the best way to test whether your rules are working, and if they're more complex, it's definitely a good practice to do. So we're signed in as Donna, and you can see that she can't see that information. We go as Susan, who's a direct report. It's getting a little confusing because this is Susan looking at Michael. But if Susan goes to her profile, she can see her reviews. and her salary information. But if she goes to one of her team members, like Michael, it's not visible. So this is just an example of how we've used roles to hide and show different information, and why they're so powerful, right? So let's continue on. And there's our third group of users are our company users. And these are people that are just signing in because they're part of these companies, right? They're part of Minx, for example. But there's a lot of information that we don't want to show these company users. We don't want them to show this pipeline, this deal loss, things like that. We don't need to show these bookings. And so we can, like we've done on these other profiles, we can jump to my company. And for all of these elements we don't want to show, we can just set up rules. So if we go to, for example, buttons, I don't want to show this mark as lost button for them. I can just say that user role is not company users, so they don't see that information. Same thing goes for this pipeline as well. It is not company users. And just to do a quick preview of what that looks like, you can see that now that button's gone, and so is that pipeline. So let's continue on and let's jump into the actual permission rules. And so to explain sort of the difference between permission rules and roles, roles are really thinking about grouping users into different buckets. So I've got direct reports, I've got managers, and permission rules are thinking about records and which records we show to different users. So all of our permission rules are linked to what are called ownership filters. And these relate to links. So whether you're using Airtable or you're using Stacker, in the data, you'll notice that you've got these linked fields. And ownership filters just say that, Samantha, for example, she owns these bookings. And we can set up permission rules to say that we only want to show the bookings that Samantha owns. This is really what you can accomplish with basic permissions. So I'm going to set up some permission rules here. Jump into permissions. And you'll notice that every table has, just by default, has a record. So every table can have one or more permissions. And these permissions can also be scoped to different user roles as well. So you're seeing that these permissions are kind of just giving everything to everyone. You're going to notice everyone. But we want to create some different permission rules here. So I'm going to come in and firstly edit this one. We're going to edit this rule, and I always like to name them just so I can keep track of them. So I'm going to call this one direct report permissions. For this one, what we want to do is I only want my direct reports to see their own deals. I don't want them to see other people's deals. So I'm going to click on the record. That's what we want to filter on. And it has to match the company deals. So in that company deals link field, we want it to link back to whatever that user is. You'll notice that there's two options. And the reason there's two options is that there's two linked fields. So one of the linked fields links our salespeople to their deals. And then the other one links our company users to companies. So I'm going to go with the first one, which is company deals. And honestly, this is, I think, one of the most challenging parts about Stacker is really sorting through these linked fields and figuring out which ones are the best ones. So it definitely takes practice. So let's, we've got that one set up. And now under permission sharing, we want to set this to direct reports. So this just applies to direct reports. Because we want our managers to have a wider scope. So I'm going to save this. And like always, I'm going to preview. And we're on kind of the wrong person here. So we're going to go to a direct report. And when we go to our company deals, you can see that Susan only sees her deals. If we jump to another person like Laura, you should see her deals, and we can see her name there. So that's looking great. Let's do our second permission rule. And this one is for our managers. Now we want our managers to be able to have like kind of free reign to see all of these deals. So I can add another permission rule to a single table. And when you have multiple rules on one table, this is what we consider advanced permissions. Just as a note, and advanced permissions are on the pro plan, just as a disclaimer. So for this one, we want them to see all records, so no, pretty easy there. And then we just want to scope this only to managers. So anybody that's in that manager user group is going to have this control. So if we preview and we go to a manager like John, jump to the deals, and you can just see everything. There's no filtering happening. So that up. And the last one I want to do is for our company users. And in fact, I'm just going to name this just so I know. Manager permissions. Let's save that. We'll just do one more. So we hit add permission. It's going to create a new permission rule. This is company user permission. Oops. And for this one, similar to the first one, we're going to go some records, and we're just going to select company so they can only see their own company. And this is a separate linked field that we use for those users. I'm going to put that. And then, as you've seen, we're just going to do this just for company users. And now, when we preview, oops. And we go to a company user, like Oprah, for example. She just sees her company, which is exactly what we want. She can see who her account manager is. And, there's other content we can put here, that's separate from our other users. So that really takes you through the full scope of permissions and roles, and I think does it in a sequence that works the best. I think sequence for permissions is really important, making sure that you get your user table set up. If you have roles, and you don't have to have roles, making sure you get those set up initially, and then moving on to things like permissions. Like I said, this is a more challenging piece of the product, but definitely with practice and time that the rules come. So with that, I'll kick it back to Ollie, and if there's any questions, we can address those.
Thank you, Liam. I can feel already people are going to be like scrolling back through the last kind of 3 minutes over and over just to get those kind of like sort of, playing with the little bits just right. But like you said, I think so long as you're, going back and previewing and testing each time you change something, I think that's the important thing, like just to make sure that, you don't just set something and then assume it's going to be right, because always test these things. So if folks have any questions, please do bring them in. There was actually a question earlier on about assigning multiple roles to a single user, which isn't possible. We do have an open feature request for that. But have you ever done any kind of workarounds for that with the current setup?
Not that come to mind. There might be something that, and I can kind of go back and see. But no, not.
Sorry, I totally put you on the spot there for that one. Because I think it's a tough one. But I think I have seen people create like, combinations of roles into a new role. So it's like direct report and company is a separate one, and then they attach permissions to them. But it does get quite complex, I think, with that. So you end up with like 15 different roles for like a handful of users.
You have to nail every sort of permutation you set as a role.
Every user gets their own role.
Right.
But were there any other questions about setting up permissions?
I think there's one there from Peter just in the chat about yeah, would be great to have a way to automatically set up, read, update, create permissions for each base in your app. And I'm interpreting this question as like being able to have permissions that span across apps in your Stacker workspace. And all I can say here is that I agree. It's definitely something, if that's what you're looking for, that we've heard from customers as well. So I've done every base create a permission for read and one for write, etc. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've definitely heard a lot from customers about having more global permissions that span different apps. So I think it's just something to continue to look out for. There's some ways I think to get around that if you're using Airtable bases and connecting to the same ones. There are some workarounds there. So perhaps Peter, we can chat about that. But yeah.
Yeah, getting into the very sort of niche specifics of permissions at this
Yeah.
point, which you will all, everyone watching this will find themselves at some point, because everyone's sort of permissions are going to be set up a little bit differently, and yeah, that's the kind of interesting thing about them. So if there are no more questions, I think I might just call it there, a couple of minutes early. But thank you so much, Liam, for that incredible overview of permissions. I'm going to take this video and I'm going to share it with everyone afterwards as well, and it'll be up on our YouTube channel, so you can watch it there again, like I said, over and over, just to try and get it just right for your app. So thanks everyone, and thank you, Liam. Yeah, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks everybody.
Cheers. Bye for now.